on some things. I think Kenya has earned its place on the global platform, and it's a big deal that we are now considered an ally, a non-NATO member ally of the US. It's a really big deal. But I don't think this is happening simply because William Ruto is the president of Kenya. I think regardless of who would have been at the helm, Kenya is still very well positioned in Africa, both politically and economically, to have been considered, you know, an ally of you know, the US and several Western countries. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the goodies that the US is giving will actually get to make a difference in the lives of, you know, ordinary Kenyans. I hope for our sake that it's not just goodies in kind. I hope there's actually some, you know, hard cash or real tangible, you know, things. I saw in that list there was those choppers that have become very infamous in this region because of the fatalities that are related to them. I don't know how we are going to handle that, given just, you know, the history of the Huey choppers. But I mean, a lot of the other things that they've given seem reasonable, seem like things that can, if utilized well, if managed well, can actually make a difference. But I am proud to be Kenyan, and I am proud of just the space that Kenya as a nation has been given, you know, in the US. I hope we will not be embarrassed. I hope that the resources and everything being given will be managed well, because remember, we are relying on a government that is very lax, has misplaced priorities on a lot of things. So I hope this is not, I hope it's not just about the razzmatazz, the pomp and the glamour. I actually hope that when the president comes back with his entourage, they will be able to, you know, lay down policies that ensure that there's sustainability and longevity in just how these resources are managed.
Maliba, there's a lot of flack when the president embarked on this mission, when we saw the cost for the private jet and the delegation that he took. I beg your pardon. But the president defended this trip and said it would pay for itself. Are you saying that, would you say that Kenyans are seeing those returns now?
I think what was so prominent about what you call flack was the cost of the jet. And that is actually a speculative price, because no one so far has availed publicly the contract, the receipting, and any other document that actually states that that is the price. But be that
so it did not cost $1.5 million.
But be that you cannot confirm, and I'm not going to confirm. So, but then let's respond to your question from this particular perspective. Number one, if you look at the fact check on the White House page about this particular trip, if you try to just flesh out what is actually coming out of it, by the time I had actually gone halfway, I actually had gotten up to, I tried working out that, and I had gotten up to 10 trillion Kenya shillings already, money that has been availed, unlocked, and consolidated, equivalent to that. Let's even assume, let's not even talk about the 200 million shillings. Let's talk about the whole trip, cumulatively, probably cost $1 billion shillings. If you were to compare that to what I actually were able to actually work out, we're talking about 10 trillion. That is like a budget, the national budget that we have for probably 2.5 years. It far much outweighs that. And then this is just a few items that I actually was able to flesh out. But as you look at that, you can also look at other, and you know that is in terms of three parts. We are talking about number one, money going to the NGO sector, civil society. There's money going to the private sector. And then there's money going to government. So it's not just unlocking money that goes to one sector. We are talking about loans that are going to startups, loans that have actually been opened up to the people in the private sector. And you can actually find it out there in billions and billions of shillings. We're talking about, and you see, even prior to the visit, remember that we changed the civil society framework, because in 2013 we came up with a new law of the PBO Act. And then for 10 years, that law was never put into effect. So it literally is going, this trip in and of itself is actually going to revolutionize our governance. It's going to actually ensure that our civil society once more becomes vibrant, because it's opened up, not just unlocking just the resources that are coming in, but we've also changed even the framework. So from where I sit, the issue of cost of the trip really now is something that the fruits that are coming out of it actually justifies. And also looking at the president, by the way, if you look at the plan, the presidential plan that we have, relatively in the aviation world, that is a young plane. Because in the aviation world, you will find planes built in 70s, 50s. Even the venerable F-16, for example, the ace of the fighters today, is 50 years old, first coming into service in 1974. So you will say that it's relatively young, but then the range, serviceability, and how it's worked around. We needed something that is actually very efficient. Look at the level of the visit. I know we are a country that actually has to speak to everything that pertains public money. Answers might not have been necessarily done well.
Living within our means, austerity measures.
But again, when you go out to every day, I don't know what your first interview was. You might not have been earning, but you put on the best that you could find that particular day. So whatever your hand could lay on your hands, when you went for your first trial, you actually, Michelle, you broke your leg for it. So for whatever we've just done, and I've just told you that when I went, just check, go to the White House website, look at the fact check. On that alone, you will actually find, I'm talking about, by the time I got halfway, I had actually calculated in excess. I'm not talking about, and I've used the word avail, unlock, consolidate, the funding that goes in excess of 10 trillion Kenya shillings. All right. That is honestly worth anything that we've put in so far. I do not think that we've done even 0.001% in cost of this.
And taking a look at the impact that it will have on the economy, but I need your comment on the fact that this trip to the US coincided with the imminent deployment of Kenyan police to Haiti. And it's an initiative that continues to face huge political and legal challenges in the country. But obviously, deals have been signed, money has been released. Where does that leave the legal and political challenges in the country?
Already we have got, I think, the first batch of about 200 officers going in, what you would call the pathfinders. We already took care of the needs, the legal needs that were actually supposed to be worked around. We needed an authority at the capital that has been worked in. We signed the partnership. So everything, it depends with where you're looking at that. But then, legally, from where government sits, we've actually taken care of that. And therefore, there is no subsisting court order that will stop government from deploying, because already, as we speak, we have got at least 200 boats, pair of boats on the ground as of now.
So the government is not in contempt of court on this Haiti issue?
It's not. Because all the requirements that were put out, that has been worked out. And we waited until the people in Haiti came up with a government. So we have got an authority there. We already signed this partnership as required in law by a competent and recognized authority at that particular point. So government is not in contempt.
All right, Mokese, I'd like your thoughts on this before we move on from the Haiti issue. What are your thoughts on the fact that, Arnold says the government has taken care of all the issues that were raised by the court and no longer in contempt? They signed a deal with the government that was in place at the time. But of course, we know Haiti is very, unstable at the moment. What do you make, especially even of the security and safety of our officials?
And this is the only part where I regret quite a bit. I mean, I would have rather seen from out of this visit that the amount of money that we would get to just go into the Kenyan police system would have been enough to just rub this blot that we're seeing about this whole Haiti issue. Because it's not very important for Kenya to send this mission to Haiti. But I think because of the US trying to be seen that they're trying to get other allies to be participant in this resolving the issue of Haiti, this is why Kenya has overstretched itself to try and prove that it can actually do something about it. But as President Ruto was rightly asked in Washington yesterday, what is the point of sending troops or policemen into Haiti? Well, there's banditry that is causing havoc in the whole of Kenya. Why are we sending troops into Haiti when our ratio of police to citizens is completely below the global average. These are questions that we needed to ask and we needed to be hard on. But I believe, if I were President Ruto and if I was this administration and people who are working very closely like in the party, I would be very cautious to how I advise the president about how he moves forward. That it's important that we listen to Kenyans. Kenyans do not want this Haiti deployment. That has been said from beginning till end. People find that there are very many more users of those policemen here back home. If that issue of Haiti needs to be resolved, the US has better people to actually work out those situations, and they can even look for an internal resolution mechanism. We're not really fit and cut out to be handling an internal strife at that level that is in the Haiti situation. And if they must insist that we must send boots into Haiti, then we need to see a serious injection of resources into the Kenyan police service so that we can actually say we might be taking 500 or 300 Kenyans into Haiti, but Kenya is becoming better for it. More young men and women are being recruited to join the service, and more policemen and women are being found in zones where there is a lot of banditry, there is a lot of insecurity, and there are a lot of problems. I have issues in Taita Taveta. People are being stolen from. There's a lot of cattle rustling in a place like Taita Taveta. Can you imagine that? Why? Because the amount of police that we have deployed in some of these counties is actually a shame. So when people wake up in the morning, people in the villages are hearing that instead of police protecting their little Mali that they have here, we are sending them to Haiti. Of course, it's a problem. So I think it's something that in as much as we're trying to maintain a diplomatic conversation between the US and Kenya in terms of support and being allies, we need to be pragmatic, we need to be honest with ourselves. Kenyans do not want this Haiti deployment. Let us listen to them. Let us be busy looking for a way to support them. But if the US says here is $1 billion or $1 billion shillings to come and help the Kenyan police, IG Koome now has money to recruit more young people and actually enhance the security systems in the country, I'm all for it. All right. Give us more choppers, give us more police vehicles, give us those things. We can now discuss and say Haiti might continue. Right. But for now, tupambane nayo, tukatae. Ekuru Okot has my support.
And it is still an issue that continues to face resistance, of course, but there's a lot of goodies that are signed even in the military space. Members of the Kenya Defense Forces are now scheduled to become candidates for courses at the US Military Academy. As a result of that trip, Kenya will also receive about 16 US manufactured helicopters, between 2024 and 2025. And of course, the expansion of the Manda Bay Airfield in coastal Kenya by building a 10,000-foot runway. That's quite a gain for Kenya there. But let's take a look at page 10 of the People Daily as we keep up with us making headlines on the dailies. And so that is a picture of the state visit there by President William Ruto to the US. But then it also gives you a look at the state of the taxpayer. If you could just have that up for our viewers. We'd like to hear what you make of that picture itself. There it is. And then when you take a look, of course, at the numbers that are on the dailies, Vivian, 471 billion shillings for the Nairobi-Mombasa Expressway, 23 billion shillings for what, in Development Finance Corporation will invest in the affordable housing project, 4 billion worth of deals signed for programs in basic and higher education. And so it all sounds very good. But at the end of the day, is it reflecting on the lives of the taxpayer? That's my exact question.
It sounds very good on paper. It sounds very good theoretically. Actually, I'd like to know, in exchange for these things Kenya is getting, what is the US getting? Because there doesn't seem to be much talk about what they're getting in return. And like we say, there's no free lunch. By the time you're being offered something, there must be several things we are giving in return. I would like to know what those things are, so that we don't just look at it at face value and think that, we are getting several trillion shillings, from the US. What are we giving up in return? What's at stake? What's the price for this? Other than, the Haiti mission, what else? What else is Kenya ceding for us to get this? And then on top of that, my disappointment generally is the double speak that comes from the president and the government. The president is on record saying, we need to live within our means, we need to follow through with austerity measures, but you don't see that in the day-to-day dealings of the president or the deputy president. And even when you look at the budget estimates and allocations for the office of the president, the office of the DP, the office of the spouses, first lady and second lady, you realize that it seems like it's all talk when we're told live within your means, because those executive offices don't seem to be living within our means. For a country whose budget is 3.9 trillion or thereabout, I would expect to see them lead from the top. When you talk about austerity measures, I would expect to see, you know, massive, maybe budget cuts in expenditure or expenditure allocations for State House and things like that that are not like very key priority areas for Kenyan citizens. So I think that's my disappointment. That and just the way we seem to be focusing on what Kenya is getting, but what is Kenya giving? What is the price we are paying for this?
All right, perhaps, you know, Maliba may be able to answer that question. What is the U.S. getting in return for all these deals?
Of course, she asked what we are getting. You're asking what the U.S. is getting. So I don't know where to begin.
No, I asked what the U.S. is getting, not what we are
return,
getting.
because
In
we can see
return,
what
because
we're getting.
there's no free lunch. You can't say that they're just giving us all these things out of the goodness of their heart.
Already, the U.S. has been actually the major supporter. Vivian here works in the civil society world. I can tell you that 90% of the money she's ever earned and whatever she gets is from the U.S. in the first place. I would have asked her what the U.S. has been getting out of her. Do you work for CIA, for example? Do you work for FBI? So this is the point. The U.S., of course, is strengthening its position in Africa and across the world. We live in this particular world. We cannot divorce ourselves out of it. And initially she said that it didn't matter whoever was in office, this will still have happened. Why didn't it happen then? Because there's the place of times and places. And therefore, there is what we have done, for example, for us to qualify for a number of things that are actually happening, for us to become strategic. Kenya has always been here. Why haven't we been declared a NATO ally much earlier? There are circumstances and happenings on the global stage and even locally that have then made it necessary. And even what we have done as a people, we've done very well for our people. Mwakesi here will tell you that if you were to look in the region, for example, we are the poorest country when it comes to resources. You cannot compare us with Tanzania, for example. They've got so much. They've got so much minerals. If you were to look at Uganda, for example, they've got a very fertile land. So if you were to compare, yet we are the leading economy in the region. What have we done? We've worked so well for the last 50 to 60 years that we've been a republic. We've ensured that we have got the human resources that can actually think this way. We've opened up this space. It's actually quite democratic. You might not like your government, but you honestly have to be proud of this country. You don't need to go so far, probably to go to those countries that we are told horror stories. You just need to cross borders around here and realize that we are miles and miles ahead. So this is what we've done for ourselves as a people. And of course, we've not done that alone. We've done that with the government, successive governments that have been in place. So whereas the U.S. has got what it gets in positioning itself, strengthening its position across the world, but they also realize that they need newer allies. I'm a little bit disturbed when people think that we are still a crawling baby and they think that this is not what we can reach out for. If you were to go to the U.S., and I think most of us here have traveled to the U.S., you'll realize that the U.S. does not have everything that allows it to do what it's doing across the world. If it's policing, for example, I don't think there's a country that has got so many shootings than the US, but yet they reach out and try to help humanity. So we are a Commonwealth as the League of Nations, and we have to reach out for each other. And I don't know how old they want this republic to be for us to be able to intervene. At some point when we had this pacifist approach to matters military and kinetics, Al-Shabaab kept in coming in until they destroyed our tourism at the coast. And quote unquote, the most peaceful of presidents we ever had no option other than in 2011 to order our military to go into Somalia. Okay. At that particular point, it's circumstances that forced us, and everybody, including the US, chuckled. If you can actually read the newspapers then, and in 2011, when Kenya went to Somalia at first, everybody was actually making fun of us because they had called our military a professional military, a career military where people just go in and they get old. But over time, what have we done? For the last 13 years, our military has proved itself to be actually a force that is ready not just to defend this particular republic, but to also help our neighbors and join the world in keeping peace.
All right. Let's take a break here on New Dawn. When we come back, we'll finish up on this conversation on what this state visit and the new ties between Kenya and the U.S. mean for policy making in the country, especially in terms of who influences the kind of policies we make in the country. The conversation is coming up shortly. Also, when we come back, a look at the top stories that made headlines this week, especially in the political front. Do stay with us.
Mgenge true legend. Skiza haso zangu